Oh, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what time it is. Don't touch the dial. Don't go anywhere because we are officially live. What is going on, everybody out there of the tech world? It is your boy Technoid back with another live episode and beautiful episode of Technoid. I hope you guys are noticing the difference because finally, after long requests, after long delays, I have finally upgraded my webcam to a real and probably reliable brand, Logitech, and we are good to go. So anyway, guys, I hope you all are having an excellent day. I hope you guys are safe. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you all are just having a great day. Well, anyway, guys, tonight's show is all about WWDC. WWDC, boys and girls, was this past week, and oh man, have there been so many things I've been waiting to talk about. And we're not going to waste any time. We're just going to get right to it. I'm not even going to bore you on an intro. The only thing I ask, just one small thing, if you've made it this far, follow me on Twitter at Technoid12. I am trying to grow my Twitter, so let's get the 300 followers, and then we can go to go. But anyway, enough talking, enough chatting. Let's get down to business. First up in the house, we've got the man, the myth, the beanie, the legend, Mr. Best Phone Plans, a.k.a. Dennis. What's up, Dennis? What's up?
Not much, brother. I love the music. I love the intros as always. And I can't wait to talk to you a little bit about WWDC. I know that this is a space where you're super knowledgeable and get super passionate about. So I'd love to hear what your perspective was on some of the changes that Apple made or upcoming changes that Apple is making.
Don't worry, my friend. We've got a whole show and we're not going to waste any moment. We're going to get to it. But also, joining us, well, give him a few minutes, but you already know this man. You already know him. He don't need no introduction. The only thing I could say is that he is killing it right now. He is on his way to 20K, and he's going to get it fast. Mr. SMT, leader of the SMT Nation. Damn, it had a little ring to it. Mr. Steve Mobile Tech. What's up, big man? How are you?
What's up, buddy? What's going on?
Long time no see from the three of you, the two of us, excuse me. What am I saying? I'm all over the place. But anyway, guys, it is great to have Dennis and the SMT join me as always. They are regulars on this channel, so they're not going anywhere. And if anybody wants to be a part of my live shows, I am telling you guys, the open invite, DMs are open. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to be a part of the show. We got Archie Mobile in the house. He says, good evening to us fine lads. And also, thank you for being here pre-show so you could enjoy the countdown. Alrighty, enough said, enough talking. We're going to skip the Rogue Energy product placement because, ladies and gentlemen, fanboys and fangirls, Dennis Sneed, WWDC 2022 is gone. It is done, but there is a lot to unpack. There is tons and tons of information that I didn't even talk about. I made a couple of shorts, which you can check out, by the way. But I wanted to do this with the two of you because of two things. Number one, Sneed, I know you're not much of an Apple user, but we both can agree that you are an iPad user. I think you've said you've used an iPad, so you've been very vocal on the iPads. So I want to get your input on this. Dennis, you're all around. We can go any direction. You're great for any perspectives. And me, be like you said, this is my passion, this is my love. So let's get right to it. So here we go. Let's start it up with WWDC. Now, from the two of you, which one of you guys watched it live? Did any of you guys watch it live?
Nah. I did see people. I did see people live tweeting. So I was keeping up with some of the stuff that was, getting released or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't watch the full 2-hour thing. I watched videos of people that actually decided to watch 2-hour parts to actually get the snippets.
Well, I'll be honest. I did watch it. I actually did watch it in its entirety. Also, by the way, I like these effects that Restream does, so I'm going to use this one, picture in picture. I like this one more. So you can just kind of overlaps. But yeah, no, it was for me. I watched it before I went to work. I went to work at 3:30, so it started at 1:00. So I had a lot of time to kill. And I got to tell you, despite there are some negatives and criticisms that I do have, which we will discuss, I got to say overall, I really actually enjoyed this WWDC. I enjoyed it a lot better than I did last year. And I think mostly because last year's was, how would I say this? It wasn't pizzazz. It was very dry. It was lacking in wow factors. And I think that's mostly in part because of Apple's software progression. But this year, though, they've done a few things that are actually worth noting and actually give a little hint at what's coming in the future, especially with the iPhone 14. So let's start it up. Let's go right into iOS 16. I'm not even going to go to the iPad. I want to save that for last because that's been the biggest talk of the neighborhood since its M1 debut. Now, the biggest thing that everybody has been talking about with iOS 16 is, of course, the all new home screen. Gee, that's the most pizzazz thing I've ever heard. No, don't talk about apps icons. Don't even talk about the fact that you could take a photo and copy, paste, and edit out without having to render. No, let's talk about how your lock screen is the most customizable your iPhone's ever going to be. Whoop-de freaking do! But in all seriousness, there is a ton to unpack here. So I don't want to take up too much time, but we really got to get into the details. So as I've said, lock screen is fully customizable. It is allowing you now to move your notifications more at the bottom. You can upgrade your fonts. You can make your pictures lapse. You can do everything. And as you see, you have more options to create multiple different lock screens. So you can create photos, suggested photos, etc. Next thing is you can also now create multiple widgets on your home screen. So for those of you that get mad with battery because there's no battery icon in the top right, now you can put it in the front of your phone. Well, I suppose that's a good compromise. Also talking, notifications once again did get another major refresh. Now it's at the bottom of the phone, which actually makes it very clean. This is my favorite one, live activities. I'm a huge Miami Heat fan, so next season when we're playing, I'm going to be using that 24/7 when I can't watch the games. Focus got a huge pickup. We'll get some feedback in just a second. Focus got some huge upgrades. They now work with the lock screens. Also, you can filter out most things now in mail, messages, etc. Photos also got a new upgrade with iCloud Share Photos, where you can now share photos with your family and specifically moments together. Then the biggest thing, which is actually the source of a lot of controversy, which is the first thing we're going to talk about, is messages. Now, the biggest controversy of this is now the whole being able to edit and send back and retract and not being able to know what was there before. So the biggest thing is, and a lot of people are a little worried about this, and I'll explain the two sides to this, and then I want to hear you guys. Basically saying that you can edit your messages, you can send or unsend recent messages. Now, it's a good thing because sometimes if you make a mistake, you can go in there and fix it. But some people have proposed the argument that if somebody sends something derogative or creepy or just something that's plain right weird, you'll never even know or see it. They'll edit it out as fast as before you even got to click on it. So there is a little bit, because if, let's say, a crime or something happens, they could alter the messages, just putting it out there right now, because those are the arguments being presented. So I want to talk about this. Starting with Dennis, do you see any issue with editing messages or being able to send and unsend a recent message altogether?
No, I mean, if it's I feel like the issues with like the crimes or whatever, like as long as there's like a timer on like how long you have to edit the message, I don't see there being a problem. Plus, in all sincerity, like I feel like more people are going to use editing messages in a positive way, like to correct like simple misspellings of autocorrect and stuff like that, than anybody being nefarious, if that makes sense.
You are correct. I agree with you. Sneed, what do you think?
The only thing I was going to ask is, are they setting it up so that once it's been viewed, then there's history of it? If it has never been viewed, does it, when you hit unsend, is it like nothing was ever transmitted? Or
From the demo we saw, it looks like you will get notified if you edit a message, but if you unsend a message, you don't get notified that something was unsended. I don't think they showed that on the. So the only thing you get notified of is if somebody edits a message. That's the only thing I think you get notified in real time.
I mean, I don't have a problem with an unsend button. I'm a very deliberate person. I'm pretty careful and I'm pretty
Yeah,
straightforward. So like,
I saw
I'm
those
gonna send.
complaints. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, see. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I'm pretty much gonna send what I need to send, and if I feel I have to express something a certain way, I try to make sure that what I'm sending, I won't have to unsend. But if it's an edit type situation, that's pretty useful, right? So like I'm kind of on the dentist side. I think a lot of people use this for good as opposed to like something nefarious or a rascal type comment or something like that.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
I'll put it to you this way: editing messages is really nothing new. Other messaging apps have done it before, and I would say that it's led to good success overall. And ultimately, if we're talking about crimes or whatever, like, let's not pretend like Apple doesn't have these iMessages saved in a cloud somewhere where they can see the
Yeah.
original version. So,
Right.
like, I just say let it ride. And if there really is something so bad that, like, you feel the need to screen cap, like if you want to get like the original message before it was edited, you could always screenshot it. Otherwise, if you didn't see the incorrectly typed message, then realistically speaking, no one ever saw it. Who cares, you
Yeah,
know?
who cares, right?
Yeah, you guys are 100% right. I don't see any problem with it. I only brought those up just to bring up the counter arguments. But yeah, I'm totally fine with this. I've used edits before, and honestly, they're actually a very useful feature. So I'm really glad that Apple put it into iMessage. Moving down the list, now here is where we get another big thing that apparently is actually not just Apple doing this. It's like the whole tech world's kind of going in this direction of no more passwords. This was something they talked about with Mac OS, but now Apple's going with passkey, which is a new way to sign in more safely rather than having to use, and I'll expand it right here. It's a new sign in method that uses, quote, end to end encryption from phishing and data leaks that will make it stronger two-way authentications, and it works with non-Apple devices as well. So basically, this is a trend that every company's going in right now. So I guess you guys know the whole deal that cookies and things are going away. They're trying to get rid of data, trying to get rid of people from not seeing their data, all that stuff they're talking about. Well, Apple wants to come in and capitalize on this with iOS 16 with this new way of making a passkey. So rather than using a password, which then could be somehow found and then, of course, spread all over the web, you then can just use a passkey, which will work with Face ID, I believe, or Touch ID. And it'll only be for that device. And also, passkey can work for non Apple devices as well. So, should you want to log into something, you can use your iPhone, you can scan the QR code, and you can log in. So, this brings up the question: are we headed down a passwordless future? That's really the question, because for so many companies trying to go down this road of using these new types of technologies to limit phishing and datas, where exactly are we at this state to say this? Are we even in a position to argue this?
Go ahead, Dennis.
So when it comes to security, it is a goal in the security industry to go to a passwordless future. Like, that is the goal, because passwords in and of themselves are inherently flawed in nature, especially when you talk about the human, right? Remove the human out of the equation, that fun kind of thing. The problem with going passwordless, I use quotation marks with this because this implementation isn't actually passwordless. All that's changing here is Apple has a hash, essentially, that they're giving out to the provider as your password. You're just not typing one. And then there's a secret key to decrypt that hash to verify that it's you. And the thing that's verifying that it's you is your iPhone. That's the device. It's something you have. That's what proves that you are you. And it's a great system. It's definitely a step up over what most people would do, where they reuse the same password over and over again. But the problem with that system is that at the end of the day, it still requires you to use your iPhone. Like that, that in and of itself is a flaw. For good security to happen, there's a balancing act of going with a secure option as well as something that will commonly be used by people, because you can make the most secure process in the world to authenticate someone, but if no one actually uses it, then it's a useless security tool. I personally feel like this is just a modified version of what password managers do, essentially. And I am of the personal opinion that things like 1Password do a better job at striking the correct balance, because it is, even though you're using passwords in the traditional sense and you're storing it in one spot, it strikes that right balance of being usable while also being accessible across the, like, everything can actually take advantage of that system. It doesn't require any special design choices to be made. And if you want to go that extra step to take the Apple-esque approach, you can always invest in something called an YubiKey or one of those like-minded products.
Right.
Sneed, go ahead.
All right, so like with any type of security features, I feel like you gotta just kind of approach it from like maybe two or three different angles. All right, first of all, our devices have biometrics. I think we should optimize that, right? So fingerprint, whether it's on display or like a fingerprint scanner, like haptic or whatever, that facial recognition, iris scanner, right? There's another biometric, and then a PIN number that's like 6 digits long, and then a password or something. I feel like those types of measures are a little bit easier to like build into a suite of security and clearance measures. And then, dude, I love the Ubi keys. I think those are great. I mean, it's like dedicated hardware, right? Like encryption and creating a new step of security, a new layer. There's no like single solution for security. You got to treat it like an onion, right? Just having multiple layers. And this is Dennis's thing in case you never caught it before, Mike. But like he'll always talk about like take the human out of the equation and you can actually secure things. That's true. Things are easier to secure when people have less control of the situation. You get more of the person involved. They make mistakes, right? They slip. They find themselves making errors. So if there's like
Mhm.
if they're gonna do something like this where they're trying to build some new security suite, it kind of has to become automated and regularly updated. And then like I don't know if it's like a scheduled new set of clearances, but like how else are you supposed to keep hacks and hackers and breaches and secure? It's just like being on your toes, right? Like they're constantly trying to develop new ways to prevent the hacks by knowing what is the most updated and most, you know, I don't know, up to date hacks, right? But I don't know what Apple thinks they're going to do that's more effective than what these other dedicated security companies are doing, but they're probably better suited adopting what has been working for the dedicated security solutions and then building that as a security suite, maybe 3 or 4 different ways to secure logins and passcodes and stuff like that.
I mean, I just want to, before we switch topics, I just want to chime in and say all security solutions that exist are going to fall in one of three camps. It's either going to be something you know, something you have, or something you are. Something you are your biometrics, and if you rely on just that, the reason that those are bad is that if a breach happens, you can't really replace your fingerprint. Something you have would be the example of like your debit card when you go to make a transaction at the gas station, or in this case of what Apple's doing, your phone. Something you know are examples of passwords. Multi levels of authentication do all three. That's the onion approach that Sneed's talking about, and that is the most secure way to do things, because it it's always a numbers game about making yourself low hanging fruit. And
Mhm.
if a security measure has all three of those, then no matter what, they're not going to get into your account because they're not going to necessarily be able to have your, like, I'll just use the example. Let's just say I stole your phone, right? I might know
Mhm.
your password, I might have your phone, but if there's a biometric thing in place, I don't have you, the person, unless I have like your chopped off hand to authenticate yourself, right? And the same token, if it's a scenario where I need to have something that you have, like your debit card, and I have your biometric info and your password, I still don't have the debit card. But if you just rely on two of the three, or one of the three in the case of Apple, I'd actually argue that it's a less secure thing overall. It's better than the low hanging fruit of people that use the same password for everything, but not by
Mhm.
much.
Yeah, 100%. And I can also add a business element to this because I was just in data studies, internet, marketing, and my professor made this argument. She said that even if we head into this future of cookies being gone or passwords going passwordless, data companies are still going to find ways to get your data no matter what. They're always working on the back door, so it's never ending. So I don't see this as a full on replacement. I'm not fully sold on this. I appreciate the convenience that they're trying to bring, but I don't see it like you said. I don't truly believe this will be a passwordless future. And like you guys said, there are other solutions that work, and Apple's probably trying to get on. And I find it funny that they use Touch ID as the icon, just real quickly. I noticed, like, they always talk about they're going in on Face ID, they just use Touch ID. But
So
I will
So,
say,
so let me ask you this to the two of you: are people asking for a passwordless security solution?
Yes.
So they're going to try to create that with this?
Well, the thing is, it's already been created. Microsoft, for its employees, already does it. The passwordless solution is the YubiKey.
Mhm.
That's the passwordless
Right.
solution.
Right.
Or the less secure version of that is with Microsoft Authenticator. If you notice on Hotmail accounts, you can go passwordless, and every time you want to log in, you just have to enter the one-time verification code, like whatever it is that pops up for the numbers. That's the passwordless solution. And people are asking for this, especially companies, because one very expensive expense for companies, specifically in the IT department, is having to deal with password resets and people getting locked out of their accounts. So going passwordless has multiple advantages. The problem, like I said, is that it's a balancing act. Convenience or security. You're somewhere on that spectrum. The more convenient the solution is, the more likely it is to be a less secure option. The more secure, the less convenience features. The biggest problem I have with Apple's solution overall is that it is tied into needing an iPhone. It only works on iPhone. That is not, it's great if you have all Apple products, but if you don't, it's useless. It's the reason why I don't use Passkey to store my passwords and went out and bought a dedicated 1Password that can work on Windows, Chrome extension, Mozilla Firefox extension,
Mhm.
Linux, iOS, Android. It works on everything. That's the right approach. What Apple's doing is great for Apple, but let's just say you just decide to convert to Android one day. Now you just lost all your passwords and stuff. It's a proprietary implementation. It's not being vetted. I can't see the holes in it. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I can tell you firsthand. I know that feeling because I did because I am an all Apple user, but I still have my Android. Well, yeah, thank you, Carlos. But I remember when I first transitioned, exactly like you said. You lose all your passwords, you got to put them back in, and yeah, it was a hassle. So I agree with you. I think that's probably a better way to go, to have everything stored across any device you use, and we'll have to see the execution on this because. Right now, we're not hearing anything from beta users because I'm pretty sure they're still testing it. But we shall see when the official launch comes. Speaking of something that also shook up the entire world, well, not the entire world, but more of the Apple Pay world, this new feature called Apple Pay Later, which is basically just an introduction to debt. So basically, the way I look at this is exactly what Clarin and other third parties are doing, where you pay something off over time with, I believe, with I think a credit check and other things. Some of them are not credit checks. You could just use it on your way at checkout. This is just an option for you to be more flexible. However, though, Apple has gone their own way. They've done it their own version, and this is how they've implemented it. You could pay in full or pay it later, and you get billed in 2 weeks, and then, of course, up to 6 weeks maximum, with no interest and no fees, according to the Apple Pay terms and conditions. Another thing I also found out is that if you use Apple Pay now, you can also keep track of receipts and track your orders directly in the Wallet app. So it seems like Apple is now starting to hit a new curve with MoneyWise. Ever since the introduction of the Apple Card, Apple has kind of gone all out and just kind of started to become their own financier. They've become like their own mortgage in some ways, like Archie says, Apple Mortgage. So my next question to you is, even if this is a useful feature, do you see this as a way for Apple to get a new kind of hold where they can just tell you and dictate how you can pay? And this doesn't have to be for Apple Card. I read also that you could also use this feature with even regular Apple Pay. So you can bill it to your credit card and it would be done through Apple. Even if first party OEMs are not happy with this, Apple's going to offer it no matter what. So they got to get on the ball as soon as iOS 16 launches. So what are your thoughts on this?
I don't necessarily think it's going to be all that impactful. I don't think 6 weeks is enough time to make someone get into serious debt. And I feel like the people that want to buy stuff and put it on debt are going to use a credit card, like in a traditional sense, like the Apple Card product. And a lot of other people are going to fall in the other camp of just paying for it all in one shot. the people that are using this might just be doing this to push things back, maybe like one paycheck because of awkward timing of the purchase of a pre-order. But I don't necessarily see it being that much of a problem or being that much used.
Mr. Sneed?
I feel like people like these types of services. I don't know if they do it, they use it because it buys them a little bit extra time, like Afterpay and stuff like that. It just gives them a few days or a week or so, pushing towards their next paycheck. I don't know. Does this cater to a certain age demographic? Is there like a group of people that is more inclined to use this service? Or is it just, like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like the younger group tends to like these types of features or whatever, or services. I
Oh,
wouldn't use
yeah.
it. I'll tell you the truth. I wouldn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just me personally. I don't know. Was anybody asking for this, saying, "Hey, this would be a cool thing to have," or is this
Mm-mm.
Apple just reaching? Right?
See? See, even Archie says he will not ever use this service. I'm probably never even going to use it either because, for starters, if I like you said, if I'm going to put myself in some debt or at the very least space out my payments, I'm just going to use an Apple Card because Apple offers 24-month financing on all their products. If you get
It's
an
a
iPhone, an
traditional
iPad,
credit card, right? I
yeah, it's a
mean,
true. This is just you taking your Apple Pay purchase and splitting it up. So that way you could pay off the balance, rather than doing the lump sum, you can
does
kind of
it
split it up.
does it change anything? Does it consolidate the value?
I
Does
don't
it?
think it does because it doesn't. It doesn't. I don't think it does because it doesn't work. It's not just limited to Apple Card. If this was something for Apple Card, I'd say then that's an argument to be made because you're using Apple services. But according to Apple from themselves, this is going to be used just in regular Apple Pay. And I even seen that some of these parties they're not on board with this. They do not want to use this, but Apple is rolling it out native in the app. So we got to see how these.
That's another important thing to touch on, right? In this solution, so with credit cards, the reason why all companies are like a-okay with you doing whatever is because Visa or MasterCard or American Express or whomever, they're paying the balance for you in full, even if you do like 24 months financing through Visa. Visa at that point's the one that's like taking on the debt. In this situation with Apple, on the other hand, the company that you're dealing with directly is the one that's responsible for taking on the debt. And if you just decide not to pay your bill, I'd love to know the thought process and what goes on as far as collections actually goes. But generally speaking, I don't see this being the most popular thing in the world, mainly because I don't see a lot of companies necessarily adopting it. Because first, Apple Pay would need to be accepted, right? Which a lot of places don't do that. And second, the places that do accept Apple Pay would also have to be cool with not getting all their money up front for the product that's being purchased.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on this. And speaking of Apple Pay for just a moment, a lot of reason why most businesses don't use the Apple Pay NFC pairing is because they just cannot afford that fee because Apple takes like a nice commission out of any purchases made with Apple Pay. And from I forgot what the percentage is, but most small businesses can't even afford that percentage because they need all the money they can to pay the rent. You got to get the business, you got to take your paychecks, and Apple just be like, "Yeah, we're gonna license that stuff off you." So I'm really going to keep my eye on this feature because I want to see the implementations. I want to see the consequences that come, if there's any good and maybe if there's any bad. Um, Anything else to talk about anymore? The next thing they're still pushing is identity. They're still pushing this whole driver's license with your app and the whole government issued ID. I don't know, like, because here's the thing. They've offered this for about a year now, and in a year, only 2 states have said this is okay. I don't know if New York will get aboard on this. I don't think they will. I don't know if Florida is going to get on board with this. I don't see. The only 2 states right now is Arizona and I think Washington. I think those are the 2 states that are. But in a year, the progress that Apple claims that we're going to get your state, we're going to get your license on your iPhone, so you don't have to carry a wallet. They've only gotten 2 states in the last year, and it was just one state for an entire year because most states do not want people using digital methods. They want physical evidence because sometimes, well, that also brings up the argument, would it be better with digital ID because sometimes you can't forge that, you can't make a fake document, that's something that's real, and usually you have to verify through, you have to use your social security if you're going to put in your government issued ID. So that's one way maybe to crack down on fake IDs. I don't know. But again, I don't see any states jumping on board with this as, yeah, this is a great idea. I mean, maybe in a few years, once we've kind of, expanded a little more. But right now, Apple's still pushing this feature, and they still haven't got it off the ground. And I think
So
it's because
I would say, Mike, that you're probably right about one thing. Is you got 2 states currently, right? That would probably increase over time. Another state, a few weeks later, another month, a couple states get added.
Mhm.
Now stuff starts to kind of get like positive traction. Like people are saying, "Oh, like this state did. Why don't we do it?" Other states will look around and say, "Well, our neighboring state did it. Why don't we do it?" That's pretty convenient. I could use that, and it probably will get more readily adopted. And there will be states that will object to this, no doubt. Some states won't, right? And they'll be like the last ones. They'd want to fight it. Like for example, like Ohio. I don't see why Ohio wouldn't. I could see them accepting this.
You're just
Like
pleading right now. Now you're making a case for the CLE.
yeah,
You
like
want that feature.
I wouldn't I don't like I guess I would use it if it was available to me to put like a digital ID, but the trouble is this. Some of the IDs now, like the Ohio IDs, they scan for certain things. So like
Hmm.
does that scan? Like and
Or
do they say, well, you can use it as your identification, but we can't scan it for like such and such purposes, whatever it is. You
Sneed.
know,
So I can touch on that for you real quick, man. Remember how I talked about the layers of authentication that exist? You can do things to make it so that digital ID is a uh like a real method of verification, like a token based system. Like you can have it generate a token based system with the web server to verify that it's you through scanning. And B, if you do things extra right, you can actually make it actually more secure and more harder to forge than a physical
well, you
driver's
don't have
license.
to convince me, Dennis. You would have to convince the states. And by the way, some state representatives are 70 years old
yeah.
and they don't get any of this.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'll just say this: the push for digital forms of identification is definitely a strong thing, in my opinion, because much of the ways that we can authenticate ourselves right now in the U.S. are static things. So, i.e., my social, right? Social gets stolen once, it's forever screwed. If we go to a digital method of authentication where it's like, say, social plus password plus time-based authentication to verify myself at that time, that would be a much stronger way to do things.
Hmm.
But as you touched on, Sneed, with all the old heads in Congress, I don't see that happening for us in the US anytime soon. Although I will say that this method of digital identification has taken off in a lot of places in like East Asia. It's actually a
Hmm.
pretty common thing, and it's been quite successful. Specifically, Singapore is a country that comes to mind where this is a very popular method of doing things. And I also know that with passports, digitalized passports has happened before. Um,
Hmm.
so that's a thing that's already happened here in the U.S. Specifically. So I don't know why the driver's license would be too different.
Yeah, Carlos, shout out to Carlos as tech. He brings up the point that, one of the other things is online services could be easily hacked, and then, most frauders could get into your digital platform and then get the license, and then you have to get a new one. So it does bring up the security aspects because it goes back to what we just said. How safe is too safe for convenience? Like it goes back to that argument. And I don't think Apple even touched up on how they would keep it safe. They never mentioned any kind of ways to encrypt it. God forbid anything ever happened to it. So there are still some questions, and the only positives that I see that come out of this is less forgery of fake government IDs, because that would be certified. You have to get it verified through the app. And number two, if let's say you do leave your license at home, or if let's just say you lost it, you have a backup in your phone. So I do see some things there, but I gotta wait and see, because if New York gets on board, then yeah, then people are going to do it, because I feel like the three biggest states to do it would be New York, California, and Florida. Those are like the three biggest states, because New York, as you know, highest insurance rate in the country, or one of the biggest highest insurance rates where you pay. California is up there, and Florida is now starting to make its way with many people moving down there. So we'll have to see. But you're right. Convincing Congress is going to be a thing. Speaking of cars, CarPlay is getting a full 100% redesign. It is going to be very close to what Tesla software looks like, because I own one and I'll be doing a 1 year review very soon. Just need
Oh,
a little bit
cool.
more time. I just need a little more time with the car. But I want you to take a look at this image on your screen. This is a mock-up image. This isn't an official image, but this is a mock-up of what Apple claims is, quote, the next generation of CarPlay with full integration, immersive iPhone experience with your vehicle. This is probably the best look or the best rough draft of the Apple Car intentions. This is exactly what Apple is going to do with their car. I've been talking about this car, the world's been talking about this car, and this new version of CarPlay with the layout, the designs, the schematics, based on the rumors we've heard, this thing is going to be a one-for-one extension of your iPhone. That is literally what this software is going to be. But another thing that they also brought up is the replacement of, your entire display. Because if you look at here, you can see the car using your iPhone. It can sense your car's speedometer, what gear you put it in. You've also got room for your reminders, garage door. You can open it if you're a smart house. You've got your music layout. And then on the front, you have the touchscreen, which kind of looks like Tesla's display a little bit with the ACs at the bottom, the widgets, your smarts. So this is the biggest intention that we are seeing from Apple. This is exactly the new way they're heading. This is laying the foundation for when they launch the Apple Car, which is still like 5-6 years away. So seeing them do this now is giving us the best indications. And the best indication is that they're going to turn your iPhone into a car. That's my thing, and also something about battery technology. But I'm not going to go any further on that. There's nothing else for me to say here. I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add, but there's really not much left to say.
Looks good. I mean, the layout's nice. I like I guess the estimated size of like the vertical and like the width, the dynamic of I don't know the specs
So
of the size. But like the only thing I would say is simplicity is going to be key. And the reason I say that is you got people driving, you got people that are passengers in vehicles, overdoing it, too many moving pieces and parts, very distracting, maps and other services and stuff that are going on simultaneously. Keep it simple, stupid. People will appreciate it. The color scheme looks good. I like it. Fine tune it. Just, don't overdo it. I think it'll be fine. It looks good.
So I actually am in a camp that I bet you weren't expecting. I don't actually like this. My personal hot take here is that I don't really want my phone company to be making the software that truly operates the entirety of the car, if that makes sense. The reason for that specifically is because of three main factors. One is that in the automotive industry, there's not really too much standardization when it comes to like screen layouts, like aspect ratios and stuff like that. Unlike like screen monitors and stuff like that in the tech world, I can very easily see an update coming out that for some reason or another cuts off, say, like the speedometer off the screen. And that's like really important information. Two, is that in the tech world, they tend to push out updates fairly regularly, which generally speaking is a good thing from certain aspects. But there's this idea of like, if it ain't broke, you don't fix it kind of deal. And I can easily see a bad software update going out that really could mess up stuff for someone that's trying to drive their car. Like, that's not great. And third is that I don't know. There's this fine line between car and tech that gets blurred over time. And I don't know how great I feel about specific car features becoming more and more integrated with a need for a data connection, especially with how poor our infrastructure is here in the US.
And it's funny because being an electric car owner myself, I can tell you Tesla is the biggest one that's getting plagued with the most investigations. And if you watch the news, you will see Tesla had to recall so much software. The NHTSA, they are up Tesla all the time. They're investigating the full self-driving service. They're trying, actually right now as we speak, they're trying their hardest to get Tesla to recall the entire autopilot feature, not just full self-driving. They want the whole thing scrapped. They're like, listen, your thing is unsafe It's causing accidents. It's this and that. We don't care how smart your car is. We don't care about the sensors. We don't care about how many cameras you have in a car. It's just not safe. So they're saying get rid of it. They're telling, they're telling Tesla, you got to get rid of it. And Elon, for whatever reason, he's not budging. He will not remove the autopilot. He'll continue to make software. And you brought it up. There were times when they released a full self-driving beta, and thankfully I've never signed up for the full self-driving. I've kept with the standard autopilot. I don't need full self-driving. I don't need to drop 12K for that, especially because you're dropping 12K for a beta. But even so, there was an instance where the software literally was causing the car not to brake or get the right amount of distance from a person in front of you. They literally had to recall that software the same day. So you're right. And of all people to, for all companies to release a car software, Apple should probably be the last one. I'm okay if they want to do this. I'm okay if they want to replace your home screen with the CarPlay. I'm cool with that. But I do agree with you, and I don't disagree, because I thought when you brought your hot take up, I thought I was going to say, I don't really agree. But you're right, because I can relate to everything you just said, especially being from a car company that knows about the electric industry. So you're 100% right. I can't argue. I mean, I agree and I disagree, but at the end of the day, I'm leaning more towards the agreement side. So, yeah.
I just want to also clarify too, to be clear, I don't mind Apple having a screen in the middle of the thing that shows you like Google Maps or controls like your air conditioner or your volume to your speakers or simple stuff like that. What I don't want is anything that touches the odometer or like critical information about like warnings, like when your engine's about to blow up or something like that kind of stuff. Leave in the hands of the actual manufacturer to tune. I'm cool with car manufacturers taking their sweet old time adopting things like self-driving and all that stuff, because those are areas where that needs to be really well refined before it hits production, because it's very hard to recall things in a vehicle like that. And it's also very hard for a non-car manufacturer to support such a wide variety of makes and models of vehicles, which is why I get a little bit hesitant when Apple talks about like this full integration thing, because there's a lot of cars out there from a lot of different years with a lot of different processors from different manufacturers, and it's a lot to consider. And to me, cars in my eyes are big metal death traps that I want to be as safe as possible. And while I love convenience and I love tech, that's something I don't want to trade off on. So
yeah, you're right. You know what? I'm not even going to disagree. I'm not even going to argue. You're 100% right. So yeah, we'll see how Apple does this, and we'll see if the NFTS, whoever they are, I'm not going to say their name again. It took me 2 years to figure out what their name was, and I just lost it in a second. So, but it'll only be a matter of time when they get into there you go, NHTSA. There you go. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, that's iOS 16. I just realized we spent a whole duration, so we got to start picking up the pace now. But iOS 16 was the main powerhouse of the show. That was really the future going forward. Most of the features we talked about carry over to the Mac. The only big thing with Mac OS that I saw, I want to talk about this real quickly. Watch OS wasn't really that impressive to me. It's just, we're adding more health features and we're just adding the fitness app to your iPhone. So it didn't really stand out to me as much. But the one thing that I really liked, and I think this is where we're going to transition right into the to the iPad OS, is I really like that new dock system they have, that redesigned. They call it the Stage Manager. There you go. So the Stage Manager is a new way for you to organize. It's basically similar to like Windows, like how Windows used to do this back in the day. Basically, Apple just said, okay, we'll do this, but we'll also kind of make it. Essentially, it's just grouping all of your icons and everything and web browsers into the side of the dock, so you could switch easier now. This feature is probably more optimized for M series Macs, because I've been seeing, at least we're going to check right now with the upload. And oh yeah, another feature is this, where you can use your Magsafe to use your iPhone as an external camera, which is a very good feature for content creators if you can't afford really good setup. And especially now, apparently the ultra wide camera on the iPhone can use center stage. That's going to be a huge feature for anybody, not just for FaceTime. That's going to be a good feature for content creators.
That is pretty nice to get you a high quality image for video. That's pretty good. I like that.
When that comes out, I might actually be updating my stream setup to where I'm actually using my Mac instead. just so I can use my iPhone camera. Because I mean, I have a really great Logitech webcam. Don't get me wrong, but my phone camera is
Yeah,
probably the
they're
best
great.
camera I own.
And now Apple can leverage that, right? Like, look at what your phone can do. Like, look at what these phones,
Oh
the
yeah,
ones they're
I'm
selling.
buying that. That whatever that accessory is, I'm getting it because not only can I use that camera for literally when I make my own videos, but I can use two cameras at the same time. I can
So
use
so that makes your phone more valuable, right? More usage.
and your Mac even more better because you can just take the photo and boom.
And it's like a new feature, like for Mac
I'll
in a
give
way,
Apple that.
right?
That's a really great feature. I got to give
Yeah.
them that.
The only
They've also.
caveat,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
the only caveat is that I'm not sure if from my understanding at the current moment in time, it only works on FaceTime, I believe, if I'm
Let's
not
check it out real
mistaken.
quickly. Let's see. Um,
It's
it
gotta get
does.
full integration with, like, recording video and live streaming, like, it's gotta go to, like, YouTube and Restream,
Right.
and it's gotta go across the board because people are like, Dennis, I'm gonna use that for my live streams.
Well, it says, yeah. Well, it says it right here. It can be used wirelessly. It also allows you to use this for streaming. So it does show an image of Zoom. So maybe it is limited to FaceTime. But then it shows another person using like a desk view. So maybe you're right. It is probably for FaceTime right now. But then once they fully integrate it, maybe they could then say you can use it to capture video. So we'll have to see when it
What I
comes
what I
out.
what I'm getting at is I think this is going to require every company to support the feature, and that is a concern because who's to say StreamYard or Restream can support that, right?
Well, no, that would happen on the device level. It would just have to go in as, like, an input
As a
to
camera, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It would just be like an extension because it says it right here. The way it would work is your main camera will be the overhead, and then if you want the secondary, of course, this is a feature that would work. But essentially, you can just link up your iPhone camera using this adapter. I don't know how this adapter works.
I'll tell you
I don't
what,
even
though,
know.
you're probably not gonna be able to use, like, the integrated camera experience. It's gonna have to choose
Oh, no, no, no!
one.
You're not gonna be able to do this.
Yeah,
No,
you're gonna
no.
have to choose, like, one camera from, like, say, for example, the Pro model devices, how they have 3 cameras.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
you're gonna have to choose one of those cameras.
I'm taking the ultra wide camera for the center stage, so
Sure.
it can
Yeah.
autofocus. I'm taking that.
I'm
Right.
taking the main one because I want it to be able to zoom in on my green screen.
Good point. Very good point. Speaking quickly before we get down to it, because I really want to get into iPad OS. They've fully gone in on gaming. Apple has officially done it. They're officially going in, but not exactly the gaming we're thinking of. But it's a step in the right direction. They are going to enhance the graphics with the M series chips, which is one of the biggest topics we'll talk about. They've also partnered with a brand. I think they've actually partnered with one of the actual streaming services, like the companies that allow you to get real games. I forgot what the company was that they partnered with, but it won't be limited to iOS or even macOS games. You could actually get real, authentic graphics, and they're touting this as their next step towards new visuals, quicker loading, and performance. So in a way, I'm glad that Apple is embracing the gaming area because their M series chips are capable. But it's just a shame they took them this long to accept it. And lastly, last thing to talk about is, of course, now, which is what we're going to get to with iPad OS, is the support. Because according to this layout, it seems that they're going to. This is the like if you guys are seeing the screen right now, any MacBook made from 2017 and forward are the last set of MacBooks. They annihilated the 2013 to 2017 lineup because basically this is Apple's way of saying we're done with Intel. So they just annihilated any Intel model from any span. The only ones that are surviving are the KB Lake processors, the Coffee Lake processors, and probably, well, actually MacBook Air with 2018 model. Okay, yeah, you're fine. Okay. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, this is Apple saying, look, you've got another year before we officially nix off the Intel models. They're basically saying, look, if you want to keep your Mac, you can keep your Mac, but we're going all in on the M series chip, so it's now or never, people. They're literally putting a timer. I knew this was going to happen. I had a feeling this was going to happen because when I saw the M1 chip from last year and they debuted the M2 chip, which we'll talk about after, it's amazing to me that they tell people our future is a M series chipset. Well, the moment they said that, I said, watch all the Intel models get annihilated. This proves my point. And that's why I got my M1 Pro MacBook Pro.
So when you say annihilated, you're just talking about support, manufacturing, sales,
Everything.
the whole
So the
shebang is just
only
gonna get
thing you
cut
might
off.
get is maybe, yeah, the only thing you might get is a security patch here and there. But I don't see
Sheesh.
them. I don't know. But
So
that's
Yeah,
Mac
but
basically,
the
you're
OS.
pegging it to be completely abandoned, the whole line.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing that's rough about that here is that the Intel chips, like, they're not bad. It's not like they couldn't run the OS. Apple's just choosing not to support them. It's a conscientious decision to force people to upgrade.
But it's crazy because Apple basically purchased Intel, you know, Intel,
Modems.
yeah, tools and like so they're making their own. Who's to say that Apple, who is, going this direction, who are they really going to make a chip that's that much better? Or is it going to be similar in the early onset? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it really that much better?
I mean, the
We're
ARM,
Go ahead.
the M1 chips that Apple are making are a lot better in a few certain ways. One, most importantly, is from a power efficiency standpoint. The ARM architecture is significantly more power efficient than x86. It has nothing to do with Intel or AMD. It's just that ARM, by its very nature and design, is a more power efficient architecture, which is why you see it used in phones and other applications.
So will Dennis purchase this and be like, "Wow, this really blows my Intel out of the water. My
Dennis
Intel-based
owns a
Mac."
MacBook Pro already, 16-inch M1 Max, and I am very much blown away by how great the laptop is.
Mm-hmm.
But
But
but if we're talking about just raw performance, my desktop to my right absolutely destroys my M1 Max MacBook because you can't compete with a dedicated graphics card. You can't compete with 8 cores clocked at 5 gigahertz and, yeah, my RAM's a little bit slower and maybe my SSD is a little bit slower, but overall, the overall package and
That's
not
just
being
because
time
of age. That's not because of
right.
any other
And
factor.
but overall, full power performance, even though it's less efficient, a desktop class or anything is going to beat any M1 chipset that Apple comes out with that's currently on the market for specific use cases. But everything that the M1 chip can do, it does it very efficiently and very quickly, especially if it can take advantage of the dedicated hardware that's designed into the chip. Like Final Cut Pro could take advantage of their high res video editing. I can't remember what they call it, but they have like specific processors that let you render videos very quickly when it uses that specific codec. It's very efficient.
yes.
The problem is in order to get maximum peak efficiency from Apple's M1 is it requires software companies to design with it specifically in mind to maximize that efficiency. If you're using something that is going through Apple's Rosetta Stone, which basically translates x86 applications into ARM-based instructions, not only do you get a somewhat of a performance hit, but it's also significantly more inefficient. And at that point, now you're talking about getting similar performance to what Intel was offering from the get-go.
Yeah, I am with Dennis on that. I have seen firsthand the great of the M1 Pro. I didn't go for the Max, although now I'm starting to reconsider that. But I'm not looking to upgrade right away. I just got this one, so I don't think I'm going to need to.
Hey, Mike,
But
can we
yes.
talk about the disappointments of what we didn't get from
Oh, don't
WWDC?
yeah. We'll to get there in just a sec.
All
But
right.
don't worry. I promise you. I want to get to that
Because
because
there's like three things I just want to mention. So
yeah, of
whenever we get
course.
to it, like I really wish we would have got something
I
from a
will make
couple.
sure, and I
All right.
promise you, because this is their segue into that.
All right.
Because once going into the iPad OS, this was the main star of the show. This was why Apple saved it last because Apple knows, like this. This is a religious thing by now. So if you guys out there don't know anything, let's give a full context of this story unfolding before our eyes. So last year, Apple debuts the M1 chip on the iPad Pro. That was the start of what people thought was going to be the next best thing because they're finally putting real power into an iPad. And with Apple's whole marketing of like a computer, not a computer, kind of being like a computer laptop replacement, whatever, people thought, okay, it's got the performance. Now let's see about the software. So last year at WWDC, everybody waited, everybody whined, and they said, we're going to get that. And it basically confirmed to us that Apple did not know exactly what the hell they were doing because that software, the iPadOS 15, was the most watered down OS update that I have ever seen an M1 iPad Pro receive. And it's only one. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, well, aren't you being a little harsh? Well, here's the thing. Why are you putting an 8-core, 8 CPU? Why are you putting the M1 chip? Why are you putting the processor that you touted the start of your renaissance, the most overpowered CPU that'll ever be in an iPad Pro, and that device cannot take advantage of the OIS from its own software? So Apple, for the last year, have been tweaking iPad OS. They've been trying to make it more. They've added a touch. They've added trackpad support. They've added some new things, but people were saying, listen, iPad OS 16 has to be the update that gets the iPad over the edge. If Apple doesn't do it this year, they're never going to do it. That was the census going into this event because that was where all eyes were on. You could argue it could be iOS. You could argue some people would say watchOS. I don't know how you argue that, but I think it's a general agreement that everybody was saying we got to see what iPad OS 16 brings. And I'm going to be honest, hot take here, hot take. I was still not impressed. I was still not impressed. I will admit that they did give it better features than last year. I'll give it that. They did bring over some Mac features like the center, like the stage center, as you're seeing. I do admit that I like the idea that the iPad has a desktop structure. I also even appreciate the fact that they finally optimized it with an external monitor to act like a Mac. So you're probably saying to yourself, yes, this is great. This is awesome. However, now we get to the biggest problem. The first and biggest problem with all of this is that, for starters, it's still an iPad. It's still an iPad. You know, I don't understand what people were expecting, but this is just an iPad at the end of the day. It's never going to replace a Mac. It will never replace your MacBook Air. It will never replace anything. But at the very least, it should be able to do the certain requirements of what macOS can do besides just surfing the web. But here's another problem. Even though, and I'm kind of split on this, but this is the biggest issue we found out. This update with the center stage, the external monitor display, is only limited to the M1 series of iPads. That means if you have an iPad Pro from 2019, from 2018, if you have an iPad mini, although I don't understand why you would want to use an iPad mini as an external display or whatever, but if you have an older iPad Pro with USB-C, kiss any of those features goodbye. You're not going to be able to use them. Now, this is a dick move on Apple. Even I've got to say it. That's a dick move because the A12Z and the A12X CPUs are just the same as M1. The only difference with the M1 and the A12Z is that they both have an 8-core CPU and GPU, but the M1 chips are clocked in slightly higher in graphics performance with the A12Z.
Well, Technoid. Sorry, just to go one step further, man, don't forget the A12Z is what developers got sent out as dev kits to develop the updated versions of M1 Max's macOS experience.
Exactly. So I don't understand. Here's my problem. See, I can understand that this does solve the criticism that everybody said the M1 iPad Pro should take advantage of. I'm all for that. But you're telling people that have iPad Pros from 2018 that still actually work very well. I still have
Well,
mine.
those things were expensive.
And those things cost, they're the same price. They're the same price as the new ones. But you mean to tell me that an A12X and an A12Z with desktop architect structural made designed for software like this can't take advantage of an external display?
So
And
here's
the
so here's what's happening,
like,
and this is what I believe is happening. All right, so number one, you mentioned it. Like an iPad is an iPad. You can't change its DNA, which is it's a tablet, right? It just
mhm.
it's just not there. The other piece to this is the iPad has a lane in and of itself. There is no competition. Why would Apple feel compelled to do things it doesn't have to do? Like there's no Android counterpart pushing Apple to do something special with the iPad. Like say for example, if Google made a tablet that was phenomenal, the Android version of the iPad, and had innovative new features and experiences, immersive app and OS applications. And then Apple would have to be more innovative. They'd have to make the device more intuitive. They'd have to make it more capable. I mean, like nothing competes with an iPad. There's nothing out there. So they're probably like, what we're doing is fine. People are still buying these. And I think sometimes backstage they're laughing. They're like, "Look, the iPad's great. We don't have any competitors and we just sell these things and everything's fine. Don't go outside of our box. Let's stay in our lane and just, bring a little thing here and there and tell people it's updated, and let's make a pro model and let's sell it for twice the price." And that's what I think is happening, Mike. I think it's that.
So
I think it's those two things. I think it's hardware is restricted, right? You're hitting the ceiling. It's an iPad, and then the other piece is there's no
Nah,
competitor
nah,
really
nah,
So
pushing.
nah. It's
Sneed,
not hitting.
I
Yeah.
disagree with on 3 points. One, the hardware is not the problem here, like at all.
The
This
hardware is
is
there, yeah.
the Apple's just making a conscientious decision to not basically, if they wanted to, they could just throw Mac on S on that MacBook and call it a day, and it would run like that. That's where the hardware is at. It's
You're
literally
talking
the
about a
same.
MacBook.
An
Um,
iPad.
yeah, on an
Okay.
iPad. They could throw Mac OS on an iPad and it would run just like that. It's the same hardware that's in the MacBook Air. Secondarily, as far as
But the
iPads,
MacBook
so
Air is not good.
yes, it is.
Yes, it because the most reason why it got better is because of the M1, and now it's got the M2 with its redesign, which we'll talk about in just a
Dude, the
second.
MacBook
Because
I,
Air is
I would tell
phenomenal.
you guys historically, I've always looked at the MacBook Airs as the worst devices Apple ever made.
Historically, that was the case, but not anymore.
it
Okay.
used to be, he's right, because that thing had no fan, it overheated, and just a lack of versatility. But then, once they introduced, I would think, it was a
M1.
few, yeah, once they introduced M1, it just rewrote the script for the MacBook Air. It just kind of took it to a new, and now they've got the M2 model, which we'll look at after, and then we'll get
But
to the things.
focusing on the 3 points here. First
Hmm.
off, it's not hardware. Let's get that straight.
Hmm.
Secondarily, as far as the sentence about Apple selling iPads, if this was 3 years ago, I'd agree with you. But Apple's actually struggling to sell tablets. The tablet marketplace is shrinking, and people keep their iPads longer and longer, which is one of the reasons why I think Apple's making the decisions that they are making to force upgrades. And on top of that, there's already been rumors confirmed they're going to come out with a new 14-inch iPad Pro that's going to
Hmm.
supposedly be more expensive, directed at pros. So clearly, Apple is trying to do things to maximize their profits without cannibalizing their Mac lineup. The third thing I will just say real quick is that, and this touches on my second point, the whole reason why Apple's not doing what we want is because they don't want to cannibalize their Mac line. They are dead set on basically looking at iPad as a accessory device or a consumer like consumption device, not a creation device, which is really honestly a tragic thing, because if you look at every ad, they always do it with the keyboard cases, and realistically speaking, that iPad could basically be kind of like what Microsoft's what is the Microsoft Surface. The iPad's
Service.
Yeah, the iPad could basically be a Microsoft Surface. That would be the more direct competitor to an iPad. in a
But
lot of ways.
that's the only competition on any level. There's literally nothing else, which is why I think like when you brought up the case of like market share, like you're talking about how like the market is shrinking. Well, what if I told you that their market share is increasing? Like there are no competitors, right? So yeah, the number of people buying iPads is less, but the number of people buying tablets is way down. It's not really an iPad problem per se. It's that type of market maybe. And maybe that's why they feel less compelled to make it more capable. Like why put the R&D into it? Why put the development into it if it's like, what do we care?
The reason why you put the R&D in it is because if you make the iPad act more like Mac OS and actually have full support for full professional apps, you get more sales.
Okay, so here's the
Mhm.
question. Here's the question, Dennis. And you guys can tag team this. Do we want iPads being more like iPhones or do we want iPads being more like MacBooks?
More like MacBooks.
More like
See, I
MacBooks.
agree. I think we want them more like MacBooks because the iPhone is a vessel of Apple services. The iPad can actually be a productivity tool, right? So let's make it more capable and let's make it more like a MacBook.
And the problem is Apple's making it more like an iPhone.
Here,
And
let me chime in real quick.
this is why we wanted the OS renovation, right, Mike? We wanted the OS to
Hmm.
be
Yeah.
more powerful.
Let me chime in real quickly because I think everybody forgets one important thing here. And I'm not disagreeing with anybody, but I'm just going to bring this point up. Everybody knows that Apple looks at the iPad not as an accessory, but as an entertainment device. That was the whole marketing
So what,
standpoint of the
Angry
iPad.
Birds and Netflix?
Yeah, that's literally what it was made to be. The iPad was never supposed to be this secondary product. The problem is Apple put the hardware, the marketing, they put everything where their mouth is, and they can't deliver on any of that.
But what
I'm
do
not
people
saying
want?
the people want the OIS to be fully taken advantage of, or at the very least, let it be not along the MacBook line of having a Mac OS experience, but somewhere in that realm of full desktop support for you to do things. The biggest thing that Apple could have done, and this could have literally made the whole event if they had just did this one thing, bring over one of the four biggest apps that they have on the Mac. And one of them is the most requested for the last 6 years, Final Cut Pro or Stage Center or any of those Mac OS desktop made apps. And you don't have to transfer it over to an iPad version. You could take that same, like Dennis was saying, you could take that iPad, put Mac OS software on it, and it would run like a charm. You could do that exactly with all of their apps, especially with Final Cut Pro, because we now know that they're all optimized for Apple CPUs, not just the silicones. But here's the problem. And I gotta say this. Apple doesn't know what to do with the iPad. I'm just saying this right now. They do not know what to do with it. They can't decide whether to make it a powerhouse or make it an entertainment device. Because let me show you something. So this is my iPad mini. I use this thing every day as a source for me to make content. How do I use this? Well, my camera software links up to the iPad so I can access it as an external monitor and I use it every day. But when I'm not using this as to make my videos to help me externally display my camera, I'm watching a movie on it, I'm listening to music from it, I'm enjoying what it's supposed to be. Now, you can make the argument, you can say that, that's not really a professional productivity product, but here's the thing. I could take this iPad, make it bigger, and it will do exactly the same thing on an iPad Air. It will do the same thing on an iPad, and it now can do the same thing on an iPad Pro. That's where I think we need to kind of distinguish. We're not asking that all iPads do exactly the same. We're asking for them to be uplifted a little more to somewhat of a desktop-like experience. I'm not asking for you take an iPad, turn it into Dex, kind of. I'm asking for it to just please. You put all this hardware, you put all this impressive technology into this compact tablet, and you can't even make it run in that to that level. And it pains me to see that they did give it, but that they once again held it back for the M series chips, which makes again no sense because the A12Z is more qualified to get these features. And lastly, last thing I want to say, and then I'll pass it back to you guys. The biggest also problem is, like you said, they're trying to convince people to switch over or upgrade their tablets. I have my 2018 iPad Pro for about 3 years, going on 4 next year. I don't want to upgrade because if I get that iPad, it's going to be the same performance, the same exact thing I'm getting if I just upgrade. The only
Well,
difference.
that's my point, is that's why people are not upgrading. They're saying there's no reason to upgrade if I'm just gonna be playing Angry Birds and I'm just gonna be doing the same basic things, like, whatever those games are. Like, what if it's just Candy Crush? Like, why would you spend, 5, 6, $700, even with a trade-in, by the way? When you trade in your old iPad, it's still gonna be a freaking arm and a leg just to do those basic apps on a bigger display.
I'm just gonna say something. I have an iPad. It's the iPad Air 2nd Gen, I believe. Haven't upgraded since. Literally, when you look at what people want from iPads, if it's students, because I seen when I was in college, I saw people try to use their iPad to like take notes and stuff, and one note they'd use like the little pencil and do like their little typing
I
in
did.
Word.
I did it all through 4 years.
People want to use it for school. People want to use it for actual pros. Actually, want to use it. The hardware is there. The software is what restricting it. Literally, what I'm asking is different from you. I literally just want them to put Mac OS on the iPad. Just put kill off iPad OS. There's no reason to have iPad OS exist. Just put MacBook OS Ventura on the iPad, call it a day, and now you will infinitely sell more. In fact, the iPad will probably outsell the MacBook Air at that scenario at that point.
Guys,
Because
the hardware is so capable, Dennis could literally have his cake and eat it too. There could be the mobile-ish version of iPad OS, and
I
then
was, yeah.
there could be, like, the MacBook version of iPad OS.
I was
And,
just about to say that.
like, why
Yeah.
not? Yeah, it becomes the
Yeah.
productivity side, right? So, like, you're good with that, I'm good with that. Like, you could have it, and you can put storage on these devices where it's gonna be plenty good.
Sneed, they're already selling 2 terabyte versions of this
That's my
thing.
point. That's my point, is it's not a storage issue, it's not a power issue. They're just not giving people what they want, but the problem is it's hurting their sales, and I think at some point they're wise to listen and be sensitive to that, and then they'll start selling.
The one
And
thing they can do to start that transition real quickly, because I agree with you, they should have two different OSs for the iPad OS. All
Literally
this
modes,
mobile,
right? Literally,
all
like,
this,
have, like,
yeah, this
yeah.
this mobile version, this iPhone version, give it to iPads like this. But iPad Pro should have its own dedicated software called iPad
Yeah.
OS Pro, which is basically Mac OS like. And that's where I think they should compromise in some way, because you cannot give the Pro tablets that amount of impressive power. You can give it a 120 hertz Super Retina XDR display with 1 millimeter latency of Apple Pencil use for content creators to draw, to do all these high res artwork. And then you have content creators that want to use the iPad to edit, make videos, because your iPads have Thunderbolt support, so you could transfer from a camera. You don't then give it features like this. You want to tell me I need an iPad Pro literally just to use buddy controllers to play games with my friends? Are you
How
kidding me?
so another thing to consider is, how's the multitasking? How's the
terrible.
split how's the
Terrible.
split mode? Like, can I take payments on this iPad Pro and also, be mirroring and broadcasting some kind of like a monitor, right? And then could I also have background processes going on? And the answer to that is no, but to
No.
the hardware, the answer is yes.
Hardware, yes. Software, no. That's the point. And this whole trying to solutionize with Stage Manager is just a cheap way of Apple saying it's an extension of basically us still not being able to take advantage of what you want. But we'll get there maybe 2 years from now. And
Dude,
I'm not waiting two
Is
years.
the iPad is like a Lamborghini parked in the garage.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And to see that there are people out there defending this, there are people out there that say, "Oh, but the iPad is more capable than ever."
But
Yeah, because there was
they make mini iPads and they make basic iPads. Like, they
trust
it's
Literally,
me.
I just want to prove a point. I've been holding on this for a while now. I just want to prove a point. It's clear what people want, because if you actually look, there's actually a mod out there that shows you how to chop your MacBook in half, so it's just a keyboard, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can plug it into other stuff, so it's like more portable.
I saw
And
that.
there's also mods out there of people adding touchscreens to their MacBooks, because people want a MacBook with a full touchscreen, which is what an iPad is. Literally, I kid you not, I don't want MacBook-esque Technoid. I'm saying it clearly in one sentence. In English, you can translate it on Google Translate. I want Mac OS on the iPad. That's what I want. I don't care if they charge $3,000 for it like they do for a MacBook Pro, but if they did that, I would be more happy to buy one. Give me Mac OS. Give me full desktop class apps. You're selling 2 terabytes of storage for what? Flappy Birds? For photos? The camera on the iPad is worse than my iPhone. Just give me Mac OS. That's what literally everybody wants. And I
Dennis, weren't you playing that game with the narwhal that was eating the donuts in the sky and stuff?
Oh my god.
I don't know what you're talking about, but literally the Pro line of iPads, Mac OS on it. If you want to keep iPad OS around, keep it around for the mini. Call it a freaking day. It's that simple.
Hell, even keep it for the $300 iPad and maybe the iPad Air. But iPad Pros should be getting their own. They should. I don't think we're going to see Mac OS on an iPad, unfortunately, Dennis. But you know what?
Dude, we can't even get a calculator app on the iPad.
They finally brought the weather app on. But
not the calculator. Apple says, screw you, calculators are reserved for iPhones.
Makes
that is
no
crazy.
Sense. That makes no sense. Look, I think we all agree Apple is still killing themselves with iPad, and I think they don't even know what they want. So I'm going to leave it at that. But real quickly,
they know what they want. They know what they want. They're just choosing to ignore what the consumer wants. Hence the reason why iPads don't sell.
Exactly. You're right. I can't even argue. All right, real quickly, before we get to the stuff that we wish we had seen in WWDC, and then we'll wrap up this episode, real quickly, going back to iOS 16 real quickly, I want you guys to remember this image of the home screen, because this is our indication of always on display. This is what Apple's going to show at iPhone 14 and 14 Pro. So this whole customization, this is basically always on display demo if your iPhone 14 supports it. So just remember this, because it was confirmed in beta codes for always on display. So that's a good thing. Taking a look quickly, there were some updates to, again, AirPods with spatial audio, Apple Watch, again, getting more integrated with Apple TV. No talk of HomePod because Apple doesn't really care about the HomePod. But that's basically all the big juicy things of WWDC.
All right.
So
can we do the disappointments?
Let's get to the disappointment. What did you think, Sneed?
Okay, so disappointment number 1. No discussion or mentions about AR, right? Like that's going to be their next frontier. They're going to be competing with the likes of the metaverse and all of that. And we got nothing. No mentions, no teasers. They probably should have planted some seeds. Maybe they'll do it at the next one. I have no idea, but that was kind of a bummer. Cuz it's something new to the company. They build it up and they say we're going in this direction, and then we get nothing. The other thing was, what about tvOS? Like, isn't Apple TV pretty successful, Mike? Nothing, right? And then the last thing, and this one is probably it's going to resonate with you. Dude, the HomePod is a nice speaker. What's up with that, bro? Why is that not a thing that they're exploring and moving forward with?
All right. Well, here's my thing. Okay, I'll talk about things I was disappointed. And real quickly, shout out to my best friend. He's waiting for me. We're supposed to have the man night out. Dude, first of all, you come on my live stream just to say we're not ordering food without me. Just order the food. I'll eat whatever you get. But anyway, I love you, big man. Anyway, let's get to it. Okay, so number one thing that I don't understand why Apple has taken a backseat with tvOS and HomePod. First of all, the HomePod is a hardware. I think they're making a new one. They did say they found something in the codes that show that there is another model coming out. I just feel like they're taking a backseat on features. So I don't know why Apple's continuing. I know they're pushing the smart home, but your HomePod is the vessel that gets you into smart homes. That's the cheapest device you offer that can get you a hands-free device. And tvOS is still very capable. Again, another example, great hardware, software. Well, actually, tvOS ain't really slacking, so I can't really complain on that. They got, HDR10 Plus. They don't have HDR10 Plus.
Well, actually, tvOS, in my opinions, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. But the problem is actually a hardware issue, in that to get into tvOS experience, you'd spend $200 on an Apple TV, when every other comparable streaming device is right around the ballpark of 50 to 100. to $100 on the high end.
Yeah, I think they need to create a cheaper device, but
not just a cheaper device. How about one that's not a big black cube? Like, give me like a stick, something I could put behind the TV.
Right. Plug it in and it's
for me, that's what I want to see. I think they're going to go that route one day. Number two, another thing that I was very disappointed on that I didn't get to see was them. I would say for me, they didn't really talk much about non-Apple products, but still getting the same features in the software. So one of the biggest ones I'm thinking of is Beats. Even though Beats, I know Beats is not really associated with Apple by heart, but they have the H1 chip in the Beats Fit Pro. They have the H1 chip in all of their products, so they should be able to mention the Beats line. So I feel like disconnecting them is okay, but at the same breath, you got to mention that any Apple device with an H1 chip should get those. But most importantly, I think the last thing that really disappointed me, I think I think the last thing for me, because honestly, I really wasn't disappointed with anything. I really had a good time with the event. I think I'm gonna go along the lines because I think I'm gonna go with something that disappointed me. I think that's what I'm gonna go with because I know there were things I wanted to see, but I think the thing that disappointed me the most, not just iPad OS, but I was really disappointed with the MacBook Air. I was really disappointed with that device, and I don't say that because it's a bad device. I don't say that at all. I'm not even arguing that they raised the price. My problem is that it's really just. I mean, honestly, it's just an M2 chip. I mean, granted, it is a very more capable device graphically. It has 10 cores instead of 8 cores. It supports 24 gigabytes of RAM maximum, but the whole device itself just I'm
Disagree
not
with you.
sold.
Disagree
What's
with
up?
you. I said I disagree with you 100%.
Oh, wait 1 second. You're breaking up. Hold on 1 sec. Say something now.
I said I disagree with you 100%.
That's fine. That's fine.
Reason being is because the MacBook Air M2 version is a refinement on the OG Air, fixing a lot of problems. They improved the screen dramatically as far as brightness goes because the OG M1 Air was kind of on the dimmer side. So they dramatically improved the screen brightness. They improved the actual screen real estate because the M1 Air OG kind of has a smaller screen for a laptop, all things considered, right? So now we're getting closer to that 14-inch sweet spot. They added MagSafe, which now allows you to make use of both Thunderbolt ports when you're charging, which is massive because the old M1 Air, you only had one usable port when charging. You're shaking your face.
No, my friend. He goes, we're dared. I got dared to say that. No, but I'm listening. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So, like, you have 2 usable ports now instead of 1. That's a massive improvement. And then there was just minor little things. Like, I mean, I think MagSafe in and of itself is an improvement as a charging mechanism. Fast charge support, too. Fast charge support.
Would you believe me if I told you I don't use my MagSafe on my MacBook Pro at all? I haven't used it since I got it. I have not used it because of 2 things. Number one, my computer is hooked up to monitors, so I'm using USB-C as my input, so it charges my device by itself. That's one. And number two, MagSafe is the fast charging, so that's really where you get the fast charging. Even if you have power delivery, it's not going to charge as fast, but it does get you to 0 to 50, I believe, not in 30 minutes, but like maybe I don't know. I never timed it, but I don't actually have a need for MagSafe. But I'm not saying it's not a good feature. I actually like that it has MagSafe, so I'm happy about that. I'm just saying for me, I've never used it since I've had it, and I want to use it more. I do, I really do, because I love it. It's great. It's one less port that gets taken up. But I guess why I'm disappointed with it is not that. I'm disappointed because for me, the MacBook Air is in a weird place right now. Because now we're hearing rumors that Apple is now launching 2 new models that is going to be going back to the MacBook line, the standard MacBook line. This is my problem because I don't know where Apple is positioning these MacBooks, but if I'm the marketing department, I know the MacBook Air has that legacy history attached to it, but it's going to now be stuck in a new problem because when they make this new MacBook, Where does the MacBook Air fit in? This is exactly what happened in 2015, just happening in the present day. What, the MacBook's going to be $200 more? The MacBook's going to be the same price, same configuration with fanless everything? Do you see what I'm saying? Because it's going to be put in a position where we were in 7 years ago with two MacBooks that do exactly the same thing. The only difference is that one of them had one port, the other one had two ports, and also, realistically speaking, it was a smaller computer, but it cost more than the MacBook Air. So my issue with this is that why didn't you just call this one MacBook and then keep the other one MacBook Pro? Because that's my other issue. They updated the 13-inch. Did anybody ask for it? No, but I will say this. Had they just dropped the Air tag and put this one as MacBook and then kept this one, I could make the argument and I could probably be a little bit more lenient because one of them has fans. Pro performance. The other one, no fans. MacBook Pro. So that's
the
my nitpick.
13-inch MacBook Pro kind of sucks. It still has Touch Bar.
It sucks.
And I will also just say, fun fact, if you upgrade the MacBook Air, it ends up being the same price as the MacBook Pro 13-inch.
Mm-hmm.
But look, here's my thoughts. I'm happy with the upgrades in the MacBook Air. That's not actually what disappointed me. I'm happy with the MacBook. I think MacBooks are in a better spot than they have been in a while. In fact, I'd even go so far to say, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I think Apple right now at this present moment in time is making the best laptops on the market. Just period. Like I'm like even gaming laptops considered, like I actually think Apple has struck the right balance between performance and battery life expectancy and everything else. Like MacBook is a great experience right now. Even the OS with Ventura, I think is better than what Windows 11's been doing. Like I'm actually very impressed by what MacBook is overall doing at the moment. So I'm not really displeased with anything that I saw there.
That's fine. I'm not going to argue that. I'm sure it is a great device, and I'm not mad at that. But like I said, I'm in a position because I'm seeing what's happening right now. I see where we're going to be. We're going to be back in a position where this computer is going to be asked, where does it fit in? Because they're going to release a third MacBook, and I don't know what this MacBook is going to cover. Because the rumors are saying it's going back into the tagline MacBook. It's just going to be called MacBook. You remember the MacBook, the one that introduced the crappy butterfly keys? That lineup. So I don't understand why we need a third lineup. Why couldn't this one just be that one? And I would be fine if it was, $11.99 like this price. I'm fine with that. I don't see no problem with the price increase. You're getting a better computer, but
well,
I just don't.
I can answer your question, I think.
Let me hear.
If Apple does decide to bring back the regular MacBook line, what I can see them doing is this. They could bring down the XDR display to it, so the better display, because this one still only has the 60 hertz display without promotion. So they could bring down the XDR display. They could put the regular M2 in it, not the M1 Pro, but the regular M2, so a less performant chip that would be cheaper, making it less Pro-esque, right? But still give it like a better display, have the active cooling, maybe a slightly bigger battery, maybe a slightly bigger screen, slightly improved webcam, slight enhancements, and say charge $200 more for it, but have it come under what the 14-inch MacBook Pro comes in at.
That is a good solution. I can't say that I'm opposed to that. But then at that point, then I'd ask, why do we need 3 MacBooks in a lineup? At that point, why would we need all those improvements over the MacBook Air if we're just going to keep them? What are we deficiating if they're going to be within the same ballpark?
Well, the same reason that back in the day we had the i3s going in the Airs, the i5s going in the dual-core i5 going in the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and then you had the i7s and then the i9 chipsets from Intel. I mean, people like their options and their tweaking, and people like their size preferences when it comes to their MacBooks. I mean, there are people, like if you remember when the 14-inch MacBook came out, do you remember there were people that were saying, man, I wish I could have got the M1, not the M1 Pro in that same chassis, right? There was a large enough outcry saying like, why couldn't this have been the design factor for what the 13-inch MacBook Pro is right now?
What was the MSRP on the 13-inch?
MSRP? Oh, the price?
Yeah.
Right now, for the 13-inch MacBook Pro with the M2, Right now, it's running at $12.99. You're running yourself $12.99. If this rumor is true that it's a 12-inch and it's going to be $8.99 to $9.99, then I could see that being, that could be like the barrier, because it's a few $100s less. Like you said, it does bring down a few things to save some costs. I don't see this computer eclipsing the Air if it's supposed to be cheaper. But if it's going to be expensive than the Air, then we are back to square one. I know what you mean by saying, you wish you could, if you wish you could, but you can't oversaturate a lineup with computers that are so close neck to neck in performance in some areas, and then release a model that's better than the other one that's supposed to kind of replace that one, but not supposed to replace it. And then you price it above that one, because that was the whole thing with the original MacBook when it came back, is why is it $11.99 when the MacBook Air is $9.99? You could make the argument that the MacBook Air at that time was a better built computer, but then of course once the butterfly keys started glitching and once people said one port USB-C, that makes no sense. So there are a lot of arguments. There's going to be a lot of back and forth on this, but if it is going to be a cheaper 12-inch model, then I could see.
Well, I was saying more expensive than the Air. So I was saying it would come in like $200 more expensive and have promotion. It would have the fan. It would have the M2 instead of the M1 Pro.
So you're saying, okay. So you're saying take this model, expand on it, replace the MacBook Pro 13-inch, just basically let it be like it's semi-pro, but not really semi-pro, a few $100s better. Okay, I could see that. I think I can make an argument for that.
Mhm.
But knowing Apple, I don't know. I don't know. And yes, Carlos, thank you for the link. This was the Bloomberg link. I know what you're talking about, but we are running out of time here, so I will pull this up on the next stream, I promise. But anyway, guys, let's wrap this up. So final thoughts, and then I got to run because the boys are complaining because they are impatient as all hell. But anyway, Sneed, go first.
Final thoughts. I mean, it was cool, man. A couple of OS things for the iPhone. Things are looking pretty good with their layouts. I like it. The hardware stuff we would have liked to see more, but it is WWDC. But I ask myself these questions when they make these changes. Are they making people's lifestyles better or more efficient? Are the tools becoming more productive? Or are they just trying to find ways to milk people out in more ways? Like you brought up the payments and all that. So to me, I mean, until these things actually come out, the hardware, I'm just not going to be excited. I told you what I was disappointed with, so that's my take.
Okay.
My final thoughts are I thought the event from a software standpoint, at least for the iPhone and Mac OS, were actually solving a lot of big problems. I was disappointed by iPad OS overall. My also thoughts are that I'm very thankful that you had me on the show so we could talk about this together, and that anybody that is still watching this video should be hitting that like button, subscribing, and hitting that bell notification so they don't miss anything. And they should share this on their favorite social media platform because this deserves to be watched. Technoid makes great content, and I'm very appreciative.
I appreciate you guys coming. My final thoughts real quickly, exactly what you guys said. I was impressed with the iPhone. I think iOS is heading towards the redesign. I do appreciate macOS. I really did like that. And I really liked a lot of the other like subsidiary sides like watchOS with some of the health features. Yeah, but again, just very disappointed in iPad OS. But you know what? That's to be expected now. But thank you guys for coming out. Thank you so much, Dennis, for that kind words. I appreciate that. But anyway, guys, this is it. I got to run because as you see, my best friends are all waiting for me. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you disliked the video, you can hit the dislike button to help circulate my videos as well. As always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all on the next episode. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Take care, stay safe, and